My husband and I bought our home for $200,000 less than every other house in our neighborhood. We did this by buying the ugliest house in our neighborhood. 2 months after we bought our home, a home with the exact same floor plan as ours sold for $100,000 more than what we bought our home for. And a month after we bought our home, the neighbors right next door to us ended up selling their home for $100,000 more than our home as well. And since we have lived in our home over the past 2 years, 2 houses on our street have sold for $250,000 more than what we paid for our home. How did we do this? Well, I plan to share with you today the things that we looked for when buying a home in order to be in a neighborhood that we otherwise would not be able to afford, to be completely honest. I do want to provide some disclaimers before we move into the tips and tricks that we did or the things that we watched out for when we bought our home. The first disclaimer is the thumbnail is not a picture of our home. It's just AI generated. I was going to share what our home looked like, the outside of it. However, when I did a Google image search to make sure that you couldn't find my home, sure enough, you could see exactly what my address was. And although I am all about transparency and I want to be as transparent as I possibly can for you guys, I do have to protect the safety of my family. I want to do everything that I possibly can not to accidentally dox myself. So that is why the thumbnail is AI generated. It is not what my actual home looks like on the outside. In theme with that, I want to be transparent. However, I cannot share with you the exact amount that I paid for my home, as I don't know if this is something that could be used to find records and therefore be able to find where I live. And again, at the end of the day, I want to prioritize the safety of my family above all things. Lastly, I am very much aware that I am blessed to be in the home that I am in and how much it costs, to be honest. I know people are struggling right now. I come from a background, a very low economic background, where there were months on months where I did not have access to hot water and had food insecurity. So I do know what it's like to have to worry about, what does the next month look like? Are we even going to have a place to live? I'm not sharing this information to try to flex or to say, oh, look at me, look where I've come and look how much money I have and all these things, which I would not say that, I am a millionaire or anything like that. I'm not. But still, I never thought that I would honestly be able to afford a home that was over $500,000. And even though I worked really hard to get here, my husband and I worked really hard to get here, it still is something that we are mindful about, that we are still in a state of privilege to be in, to be able to afford a home like this. So that being said, because we come from that background of not having really any money, we're very frugal with our money and we're very mindful with how much money we are spending. And without doing the things that I'm about to tell you, we would have never been able to afford to live in this neighborhood in the state that we're in. So we feel very blessed, and I want to be able to share that information with you so that you guys can hopefully use these tricks and tips in order to be in a neighborhood that you thought you never could afford either. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about the strategies that we used in order to get our house for the price that we did. The first strategy is to look at comps, which you're probably thinking, well, duh. I know this, right? Everybody knows this. You have to look at comps in order to know if the amount that someone's trying to sell the home for is appropriate or not. But don't look at just how much the houses have sold for the maximum, but also the minimum. And we were lucky in that there was one home that actually sold in our neighborhood. So we do not actually have the cheapest house in the neighborhood. We have almost the cheapest house in the neighborhood. But there was one house in our neighborhood that sold for $550,000. I do not know why this house sold for what it did. That house went up for sale and sold around a month before we bought or put an offer on our current home. And so we used that as a bargaining chip for the sellers. Now, that home was an extreme outlier, and none of the other houses were selling for that in this neighborhood. However, we used that as a tactic to say, hey, this house with the exact same floor plan and a finished basement just sold for $50,000 less than what you are requesting. That doesn't make any sense because yours doesn't even have a finished basement. That was the first tactic that we used. The second thing to do is look for homes that are not well pictured, that no one really is interested in, or they're not getting a lot of offers, because there is things that you have to do to the home to make it look more aesthetically pleasing. That was really the case with our home. I will show you how the house looked on the inside. There were a couple of things that were really going against this house to where they were not going to be able to get as much as they were asking for, even though the neighborhood definitely supported that, if not more, honestly. The things that went against the house was the colors inside. So it was very orange. Everything was orange. The floors were orange tones. The walls were orange. The kitchen cabinets were orange. Most people don't go for, oh, I really like orange. That just read very, oh, this is very dated. This is going to take work. But honestly, it doesn't take a lot of work. That just is paint, right? That affects that. But the other thing that went against them is this house was not staged. It was completely empty. And honestly, the pictures of the house were poorly taken. The pictures of the house did not showcase anything in a good light, and also the way in which the pictures were provided, you couldn't really get an idea of what the layout of the home was. This was a house that we almost passed up on even looking at because we're like, I don't think that this meets the layout that we're looking for. Those things require a lot of money to change. So given that, we almost decided not to even look at the house, but our realtor really encouraged us to go ahead and just, take the time, because we had already put offers on multiple homes and we kept getting outbid, and these houses had the updates already to them. And I mean, we were getting outbid like $50,000 above, and we were already bidding over how much the house was listed for. So it was absolutely ridiculous. This house, given that no one was really interested in it, we were like, we might as well. And when we walked in and looked and said, oh wow, this looks completely different than the photos from a standpoint of now we have a better idea of the layout and all these things can be fixed with cosmetic changes, we were very interested in the home. The other thing to look for is how much did the home sell for the last time it was sold? And has there been any updates to the home since then? And then how much are they selling it for now? So they had bought the home 2 years prior and made no changes whatsoever to the home, and then we're selling it for more. That helped too with us being able to negotiate with them with regard to price, because even though the market, yes, has increased to where homes are more expensive, the house essentially was not any different. And again, it was the ugliest house in the neighborhood. I mean, even I wish I could show you what the outside looked like without doxing myself, because the outside was so dreary. And we were buying in January and February, so that makes sense. But it just looked so bad that honestly it didn't look far off from the AI generated photo. They just were not helping themselves at all with trying to get this house sold for a higher amount. That was another bargaining chip. And then the last thing, and this is something that I think is going to be a little bit harder for you to figure out. You're not going to be easily able to necessarily find this information. It depends on where you're looking. But one of the things that we found out was that this home actually had sold, and then the seller lost the buyer. The buyer was not able to actually secure the funds, and so it got put back on the market. So they were more motivated to sell. But I think too that given it had come back on the market and it was not just going as fast as these other houses were, and they did not live in our state anymore. They lived in a different state, and that state's way more expensive. They lived in New York. I think that they were just ready to move on this house. We were able to negotiate with them. We ended up buying our home for around $580. The amount that they were asking originally was completely out of our budget. There was no way. And this was at like the top end of our budget. We would be able to sell it for more than what we paid for it, especially because we knew going into it that we planned to do changes to it. Some of the changes I've already shown you. And those changes really drastically increased the value of the home. So now if I were to sell my home now, I am confident that I would be able, even with the basement not being finished, I think I would still be able to get at least $100,000, if not $150,000 more than what I paid for the home, because we have made strategic changes to the home that just make it translate more aesthetically pleasing and things that people are looking for when they're buying a home, so that you really could move straight in. And the house that sold, that was our exact floor plan, 2 months after we bought ours for $100,000 more, they have basically done, but not as well as we have done. And not trying to like toot my own horn, but the finishes that they chose do not translate the way that ours do, so they look more like updated, but not as luxurious as the things that we have chosen, in my opinion. So they were able to sell the home for more because of those changes that they had made, just small strategic changes that they had made to the kitchen and to the paint and updating the finishes and things like that, and all the lighting. So that is how we ended up buying our home for $100,000 less than two homes that sold within a month to 2 months from when we bought our home. And now our home is worth at least $150,000, if not more than what we paid for, just because of how much homes are selling for in our neighborhood now. Because as you guys know, the market is absolutely crazy. It's ridiculous. The houses should not cost as much as they're costing. And I really hope that this helps with regard to trying to find a house that you can change to fit the way that you want it to look without having to have such a big price tag. My name is Rachel. This is Lux on the Low. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you're interested in hearing more about the things that I'm doing in my life so that I can live a luxurious life while keeping such a low budget, then I hope that you'll subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.